Going inside the issues of our community, this is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. Field races where a sometimes large number of people are running to fill a number of seats, but not running head-to-head against each other, are difficult to fairly cover. In the case of the Cincinnati Board of Education, for example, 4 of the board's 7 seats are up for election this year. 3 of those seats are filled by incumbents. Melanie Bates, Catherine Ingram, and Eileen Cooper Reed. The hard political reality is that it is difficult to unseat an incumbent in a field race since name recognition drives voter behavior to such a large extent. Non-incumbents face a daunting task. In addition, 9 other candidates are running, all for the first time. The Democrats have endorsed 4 candidates, including Catherine Ingram, Ceair Baggett, Joyce Hooks, and Lisa Ceair. The Charter Party has endorsed incumbents Melanie Bates and Eileen Cooper Reed, as well as newcomer Vanessa White. The Republican Party has not endorsed anyone in this race. 5 people are running unendorsed by any political party, although some have endorsements of community groups. This includes John Banner, Jason Happ, who at one point had declared for the mayor's race, Christopher McDowell, Mary Welsh Schluter, and Curtis Wells. For a number of years, my policy in fields races is to only invite non-incumbents. Incumbents have had an opportunity to establish themselves. Among the non-incumbents in the crowded races, I select people who seem to me to have a chance to win, offer a perspective that deserves to be heard, or are promising potential future candidates. This means some good people are left out, including serious candidates who may win, and as is the case this morning, sometimes personal friends. I am joined this morning by 4 non-incumbent candidates for Cincinnati School Board. John Banner is an attorney, a child at Walnut Hills High School. He has received a great deal of support from COAST, Citizens Opposed to Additional Spending and Taxes, and attention on the Hamilton County Republican Party website, though he is not endorsed by the Republican Party. Joyce Hooks is retired after a 33-year career in the Cincinnati Public Schools, including as a teacher and as a field representative for the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers. She now works as a foreclosure intervention counselor. She is endorsed by the Democratic Party. Vanessa White is Director of Community Engagement and Strategic Initiatives at the Fine Arts Fund. She is the mother of 5 children who attend Cincinnati Public Schools and the president of Parents for Public Schools of Greater Cincinnati. She is endorsed by the Cincinnati Charter Committee. Ceair Baggett is a graduate of Cincinnati Public Schools and currently a student at Xavier University majoring in education. He also works as an operational administrator for Cincinnati Bell and a substitute teacher in the Great Oaks district. He is endorsed by the Democratic Party. Welcome to everyone. And that's a lot of setup because I wanted to recognize the other people who are not here with us this morning. John, let's start with you.
Sure.
Looking at the current board over the last few years, what is it do you think that is not working well that you would like to change?
Okay. It's a little bit of an anomaly, but there's a lack of diversity on the board because they're all members of the same political party for the most part. And at the same time, they don't get along. They had to hire a consultant and spend over $30,000 to hire someone to teach them how to get along. And they really put our current superintendent through the mill in finally appointing her as superintendent, Mary Ronan, who I think is doing a fantastic job. And I don't think we need to spend $30,000 to hire a consultant and say, let's get along. I would buy a box of Whitman's chocolates, put it on the table, and give everybody a piece.
Okay, you're saying they're all members of the same party, meaning Democratic Party,
yes.
From your perspective.
Yes.
Would introducing a Republican
be
good?
I think a balance of power, a little bit of diversity is good. And I think we're not only talking about political diversity, maybe gender diversity as well.
Joyce, what do you think about this? Observing the board, and you've observed it closely for a long time, over the last few years, what would you like to see changed?
I would like to see it changed that we have so many attorneys. The board is a monitoring body, and it simply monitors curriculum, policies, procedures. And I don't really know that it's necessary that we need, I'm not attorneys on the board. I think teachers that understand curriculum and understand pedagogy, I think they're better on the board.
Okay, so you think the teacher voice needs to be heard there?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Ceair, what about you?
I think the student's perspective needs to be heard to the board. Being a former student, I know students in our district, we don't feel that our perspective is known. So I think knowing what the students need and their perspective.
What difference would that make? How would that manifest itself?
Well, you would understand the issues that students are facing hands-on.
Can you think of an issue that you think the board might have decided differently if there was a clearer voice for the students?
Well, one big issue is discipline. We have a discipline problem in our district. I know as a student, when you would ask teachers questions, they would be busy handling discipline problems, so they wouldn't be able to really have one-on-one attention with you because of our discipline problem.
Vanessa, back to the original question. If you were elected to the board, what is it like to bring to the board that you think has been missing over recent years?
I think we've been had a highly reactionary board, not a running board, not a board that takes attention to the research, the data, the things that are out there that are best practice. So, I mean, I've been in the district 7 years, seen 3 superintendents. Really need the board to give the superintendent a chance to lead and to be a learning board that's able to provide the policy, the procedure, and the oversight. So,
what would that mean? If you were a board member, how would you have to act differently than recent board members to let that happen?
I think you need to be more focused on the issues that impact student outcomes, as opposed to a focus on constantly reacting to the political environment or the things that come up that are issues that need to be addressed, but not necessarily always in the boardroom. I think it takes our focus and our attention off of the real issue of student outcomes.
Okay. Another sort of broad question. Joyce, do you see something that's an initiative perhaps occurring in the schools right now that you think is particularly promising, that if you were a board member you would like to sort of push and spread it or strengthen it, that you think is good, that maybe people aren't paying enough attention to?
Well, Mary Ronan's new initiatives, the Office of Initiative, I think that that's something that's really going to be very beneficial to our students and to academic achievement. They're going to focus on foreign language, math, English. They're going to be given a lot of assistance with community people or business people helping out. And I think that that Office of Initiative is going to bring about a big change. And some of our schools are succeeding. We're hearing some good reports. We certainly are better than charter schools. I mean, our students are achieving, and in charter schools they are not achieving as well.
Not to get too diverted to charter schools, but if you were a member of the Cincinnati Public School Board, what would you say to parents of charter school students?
I would say that charter schools are not accountable to the taxpayer about how they spend their money. They're not properly reporting student achievement. There are just so many things that charter schools are not doing that public schools are doing. I mean, we've been in the business of education for many years now, and so there's no way these charter schools that can come in who are new and know how to budget the money, know how to provide the education for the students, as well as Cincinnati Public.
Okay. John, the original question here is initiatives in the public schools, something that's happening that you would like to see advanced or promoted.
Okay, well, let me just follow up on one thing she said, because it's
fine.
very important. Just this week, the Ohio Department of Education issued a very bad report card for Cincinnati Public Schools. They determined that 30 of the 57 schools of Cincinnati have performance at such a low level that over 15,000 of our students qualify for charter vouchers that could be used at charter or parochial schools. That is not a good report card, and that's something we have to change. I think it's outrageous. We really have to concentrate on the basics to overcome that.
How would you change it?
I would change it by focusing on the basic levels in a lot of our underachieving schools. Let the well-achieving schools continue their excellent performance, and maybe school redesign. Mary Ronan did that for 3 schools. That, I hope, will be successful. We need to do that for more schools.
You know, some of the problems with redesign, though, is that you have a staff that develops a relationship with community and with students and with parents. And even though it may, because take for example a school like Euler, which faces some real difficulties, and it's made some progress, but still faces a lot of difficulties. If that had to be redesigned, though, I would think it would be disastrous at this point.
Well, I think one of the problems we're dealing with is the very high percentage of students in Cincinnati public schools that are from a disadvantaged background, where they qualify for free lunch, free breakfast, waiver of school fees. That's a problem. I don't know how we solve that one, but maybe it's society's problem as
Because
well.
that's the condition. That's
Yes.
the situation in the schools. Vanessa, initiatives that you think are particularly promising?
It sort of builds on John's point. I'm excited about the turnaround structure, the turnaround teams that have been established for this school year that are taking us in a different direction, exactly in the direction that John has just mentioned. I mean, we do have great schools, but they have always been great schools, and we need to make sure we're educating all of our students. So the 16 schools that are in dramatic need of the most accelerated improvement, there will be turnaround teams assigned to them. And again, it speaks to making sure that we are focusing on a proactive stance as opposed to constantly reacting to a report card, which is a Polaroid snapshot of what's going on. We need comprehensive change that really addresses it. So these turnaround teams will really go in. They were trained at the University of Vermont. They spent the summer there. The principal spent the summer there. And again, it just speaks to giving the superintendent the kind of leverage and ability she needs to bring in some best practices to the district.
Ceair, you're studying education right now, observing what's happening in Cincinnati public schools and thinking about, reading about, learning about initiatives that can work in urban districts. Do you see things that are exciting that you would like to spread if you were a member of the board?
Absolutely. I graduated from Taft High School. So that innovative state-of-the-art technology program that was under redesign when I was there at Taft has helped me become who I am today. So implementing more innovative programs throughout our schools, all of our schools, I think will help the average student become better.
Okay. I want to ask sort of a tough, sort of general question here, and that is, a few weeks ago, the board adopted a position that all contracts were going to be for prevailing wage. Do you agree with that if you become a member of the board, and what do you think its implications are?
I do support prevailing wages for the contracts, and what that does is that ensures that the workers are fairly paid and fairly trained.
Do you think that's going to have what kind of implication is that going to have on the capital budget? We're into this billion-dollar rebuilding program. What's that going to do?
Well, the data that I was presented for the facts, it shows it's going to be the same amount as not having prevailing wages.
So you think it's neutral. Vanessa?
I am a proponent of providing a living wage, health care benefits. But again, I think that, I go way back. I worked on that bond levy that said that we were promising the community, we promised the community something when we passed that levy. So I don't think it was comprehensive enough. I would have voted for it, but I would have voted for it along with some of the community benefits that I think should have been attached to it.
Joyce, prevailing wage.
I absolutely agree with prevailing wage. Prevailing wage is founded on a philosophy of economic growth. We have working families sending their children to our schools. We need to afford them a living wage. It's a federal law, it's a state law, and it was only an experiment that they exempted public schools to see if it would save taxpayer money. It hasn't. And statistics have shown that it's going to be the same amount of money with prevailing wage as it was without.
John, you were vocal about opposing
absolutely.
the prevailing wage. What do you think of it now that it's been adopted?
I hope to be elected to the board so I can undo it. The two Democratic candidates who are running who did not receive the endorsement, I believe, have a bullseye on their head from the unions to try to unseat them because of their negative vote on prevailing wage. And this goes back to a political issue. Governor Strickland changed the rules of the game in 2007 when he appointed members of the Ohio School Facilities Commission who voted to allow this. And I think we as board members need to be guided by two things: what's in the best interest of the students, what's in the best interest of the taxpayers.
And what do you think is going to be the implication financially of the prevailing wage? Several people have said it was going to be neutral.
Well, as one board member who I won't mention said, this is the cost of one school building. And I think this is an outrage.
So you would work to change that?
Absolutely.
To reverse it?
How do we know? I mean, how do we know what the cost is, or how do we know what the fact? We were never given that information as a community to be able to weigh in on that.
Let me just add one other point. The other point is there's going to be a whole new bureaucracy set up in the Cincinnati Public School to monitor these contracts. It's going to be a waste of additional taxpayer dollars.
But I just go back to saying, I don't think we had enough information. Again, what I saw was a huge amount of reaction. The way it was laid out, you would vote one way, but again, I don't think we achieved what we really needed to achieve in the end. Is things that we promised. We didn't do anything to protect small businesses. We didn't do anything. It was not a comprehensive decision because it was very reactionary, and you have one side talking against one side. We have best practice models in our city. A company like GE, for example, who has very successful collaborative bargaining agreements along with, so I think we need to do better.
This is obviously a critical question and a lot of different points of view here, but we need to take a break. Stay tuned. After the break, we will return with all four people running for school board, and we'll continue this discussion. Okay, very good. Welcome back. I am joined this morning by four of the non-incumbent candidates for the Cincinnati Board of Education. John Banner is an attorney running without party endorsement. Joyce Hooks is a retired 33-year employee of the Cincinnati Public Schools endorsed by the Democratic Party. Vanessa White is the mother of 5 CPS students who has the endorsement of the Charter Committee. And Ceair Baggett, a student at Xavier University who is endorsed by the Democratic Party. Joyce, let's start out this time. You have, in your career, been active with Cincinnati Federation of Teachers, the union. You've been out there in the field with them. If you became a board member and, as I understand it, later this year have to open negotiations with the unions, how do you make that transition and perform the role of board member as opposed to being union advocate?
Well, okay, let me say this. As a mediator, I'm always impartial and I'm for fair justice and equity. So as a board member, that I would not be crafting the collective bargaining agreement or the language. We simply review the language that the administrators and a team of teachers craft, and we simply approve it. As I said before, the board is a monitoring body.
But isn't the board going to set policy and direction for its negotiators? I mean, aren't you hiring your negotiating team in the past, a team of lawyers who would go in and represent the board's perspective? And aren't you giving them marching orders?
Well, yes, we will be giving them marching orders, but the union and the board have worked collaboratively for years, and it's for the best interests of students. It's for the conditions of the environment for students as well as for teachers. And people think that the union is like some kind of evil monster over here. It's not. We work collaboratively with them because we care about students. We're teachers. You know, you don't go into teaching for the money. Teachers are the lowest paid professionals that there are. So we work with them to for a better environment, for better working conditions, but it's all geared to the best interest of the student. And so therefore, when these two teams negotiate, they're negotiating in the best interest of students, both of them.
Okay, all right. Ceair, you are a student at Xavier, and reading your biography, you say that you want to, once you graduate, you want a lifelong career in the Cincinnati Public Schools. That's the way it's stated. How can you be a board member and be a teacher or an employee? Isn't there a basic conflict there?
There is. That's a great question. What I want to do is I want to, again, get elected on the school board and get our basic problems addressed as a school board member. And so that's why I'm running for school board, and then later come back to the system.
So while you're a school board member, you would not be able to teach. You
That is correct.
recognize you would not be able to teach in the system.
That is correct.
So would you look for a teaching position in another system, or would you maybe continue to build your career with Cincinnati Bell, or what do you
Right now,
what do you imagine?
I'm pursuing my master's at Xavier, so I'm working on my master's while I'll be sitting on school board.
Okay, so you would
Further my education.
You would be doing it that way. John.
Yes.
You encouraged the board not to place the current levy, which is a renewal,
Right.
on the ballot this fall.
That's correct.
And we talked about that levy last week on this show. And that's a renewal. First question, do you support the passage of that? Now that it's on the ballot, do you support the passage of the renewal levy this fall? And secondly, as someone who is supported by Coast and seems to be, could you in the future support any sort of increase as we had last March?
Let me just talk about that March issue. I think the taxpayers have not yet fully digested that tax increase. And many of the comments I received from the community is, if we get any more tax increases, I have to move outside of the district. I have to move outside of Hamilton County. I think that's a real issue. I do not think that the Cincinnati Public Schools are immune from the same pressures that have faced the city of Cincinnati and also Hamilton County. We have to be able to do more with less. We have to be valiant stewards of the taxpayers' money.
So do you support this year's tax levy renewal?
Not at this time.
So you would vote against it at this moment?
Yet, at this moment,
if this was election day, you would vote even though you're running for it?
That's
for the
correct.
school board.
That is correct. This time, it's not necessary. The taxes don't go into effect until January of 2011.
And in the future, do you, if you were a board member, could you imagine yourself ever supporting a tax increase?
Well, we have to fund the schools. There's no question about it. The question is, how do we fund it? Are we spending our monies properly? I think if the board can show that it's being diligent, like in the single supplier bus contracts where we saved money, that's a good thing. There you'll get the taxpayer support.
Joyce, you're bursting here. Go ahead, Ceair.
No, I was just going to say, how can a person run for school board and not support the renewal of the
That's
levy?
the old argument. Just because you're against the levy, you're against kids.
It's 14% of our operational
My
funds.
daughter's a student there.
It's taken away from our classroom instruction.
It's not taking away anything yet because it's not due until January of 2011. That's a long time away. We've got
Are you saying it's just a timing question?
It's a timing question as well.
So you will support it in the future, next year?
We may visit that.
You may visit that.
We have to fund the schools.
Very quickly, Joyce, I see you.
I hear tax increase. This is a renewal levy. There is no increase in taxes. This is something that we're already paying, that we'll just continue to pay, and the schools will be hurt drastically if we don't pass this levy.
Okay. Vanessa, I need to ask you a question that hopefully is a little uncomfortable. You work for the Fine Arts Fund.
Correct.
One of the areas, hang on just a minute now, one of the areas that has been under a lot of pressure in the curriculum over the last couple of decades is the arts. Would you enter the board with an agenda of trying to increase the amount of time focused on the arts in the curriculum?
I think it's already a part of the curriculum. We just haven't implemented some of the things. I mean, every school should have an art and a music specialist. That's not my agenda. So no, I wouldn't be entering the board. I do that in my workplace, actually. I've done a lot to advance how the Fine Arts Fund even looks at our role as a community partner in achieving educational excellence through the arts. So I think that, school reform outside of the larger community does not happen. We have a lot of community partners who would be invested in that. Can I just say one thing about the other issue, though? I mean, I think we start to react because we don't look at the bigger issues. The bigger issue is the way we fund schools in Ohio. And until we address that, we will never fully address our funding situation. So the renewal levy has to keep coming on the ballot over and over and over again. It's not a CPS issue. It's an Ohio issue.
And
Governor Strickland is addressing that.
And John, would you support a change in the state system?
Absolutely. I would encourage everyone to gamble more so we can get more funds for the school. I encourage to spread that tax base on to more than just homeowners and business owners, to all the users of the school system.
Well, that's an interesting take on this.
Yeah, that is.
I want to thank everybody for being here this morning, and I want to remind people that besides these 4 candidates, there are 8 other candidates in this race as well. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, another field race, Cincinnati City Council. Have a good week. John?